You had 100 billion chances and ways to have avoided today, but you decided to spill my blood. You forced me into a corner and gave me only one option. The decision was yours. Now you have blood on your hands that will never wash off. Thanks to you, I die, like Jesus Christ, to inspire generations of the weak and the defenseless people.
Why would he say those things? April 16th, 2007. The incident began on the campus of Virginia Tech in Blacksburg, Virginia. At 7:15 a.m., a man entered a dormitory building called West Ambler Johnston Hall. His name was Seung-hui Cho. He walked toward the room of a student named Emily Jane Hilscher. The door opened. Emily saw a stranger standing there and screamed. Hearing the scream, Ryan C. Clark, a resident advisor and graduate student, stepped into the hallway. Cho shot him. Clark died at the scene. Cho then went back into Emily's room. He found her hiding under the bed. Then he shot Emily Hilscher in the head and killed her. Police arrived soon after. At first, investigators believed the incident might be a domestic dispute. Emily's roommate, Heather Hoff, told police that Emily's boyfriend had once owned a gun. Police identified the boyfriend, Carl Dunhill, as a possible suspect and began searching for him. From the investigators' perspective, the situation seemed straightforward. A possible relationship dispute. A suspect who may have fled the scene. But during that time, the real killer, Cho, was still moving freely around campus. 2 people were already dead. So why wasn't the campus locked down? After the first shooting, nearly 2 hours passed. Cho did not leave campus. Instead, he returned to his dorm room. There, he deleted several files from his computer. He removed the hard drive and changed his blood-stained clothes. Then he did one more thing. Cho prepared a package containing photographs, videos, and a manifesto. He mailed the package to NBC News. It was sent at 9:01 a.m. from a local post office using express mail. The photographs and videos later released to the public, including images of Cho holding guns, were all inside that package. After mailing the package, Cho returned to campus. At that time, university officials knew a shooting had occurred, but the dormitory was located away from the main campus area. Investigators believed the suspect had already fled the university. Instead of locking down the entire campus, police began searching for a possible suspect outside the school grounds. Officers were even sent to nearby elementary and middle schools in case the gunman tried to escape the area. Meanwhile, Cho was still inside the campus. Inside his backpack were 2 handguns, multiple magazines, and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. But these weapons had not been gathered in a single day. Investigators later determined that Cho had been preparing for the attack for months. Investigators examined his online transaction history. They found multiple records in his eBay account. Cho had sold violent books and other items online. Investigators believed he may have used those transactions to raise money for the attack. He also purchased camera equipment and other tools to document the crime. His gun purchase records were later confirmed. On February 2, 2007, Cho purchased a Walther P.22 pistol over the internet. The weapon was delivered on February 9th. Under Virginia law at the time, the purchase was completely legal. Virginia had relatively weak gun restrictions. A background check process existed, but the court had not disclosed Cho's mental health records. As a result, there were no restrictions on his firearm purchases. 1 month later, Cho bought a second handgun. This time it was a Glock 19. The 1-month gap between purchases was required by Virginia law. At the time, a person could buy only 1 handgun per month. So Cho legally purchased the Walther P-22 in February and the Glock 19 in March. He then continued purchasing magazines and ammunition. On March 22nd, Cho bought 4 15-round magazines for the Glock 19 and 2 10-round magazines for the Walther P-22. Some of these items were purchased through eBay. The next day, March 23rd, he bought 3 more 10-round magazines on eBay. Investigators later discovered that he had accumulated around 500 rounds of ammunition. A large portion of that ammunition was hollow-point bullets. Hollow-point rounds expand on impact and cause significantly more severe injuries. In the manifesto he sent to NBC, Cho referenced those bullets directly. Manifesto video here. Around 9:30 a.m., campus officials finally sent out an email alert informing students that a shooting had occurred earlier in a dormitory. But by then, Cho was already walking toward another building. Norris Hall. The time was 9:40 a.m. Cho chained 3 entrances to the building and locked them shut with padlocks. Then he went upstairs to the 2nd floor. He walked down the hallway, looking through classroom windows. He was searching for targets. Inside those classrooms, students were still attending their morning lectures. The first classroom he entered was room 206. Inside were a professor and students. Cho stood in the doorway and began shooting. 4 students died. He then approached Professor G.V. Loganathan and shot him at close range. The professor died instantly. Cho stepped back into the hallway. He fired at students who were trying to escape. 1 student was shot in the arm, then Cho moved to the next classroom, room 207. Cho shot and killed instructor James Bishop. Then he opened fire on the students inside. Several collapsed where they were sitting. Another professor, Kevin Granada, moved his students into his research lab to protect them. Then he stepped into the hallway to see what was happening. There, he encountered Cho. Cho shot him in the head. Professor Granada died at the scene. The shooting spread to other classrooms. One professor told his students to jump out the window. Students escaped through a 2nd-floor window. The professor stayed behind, holding the door to buy them time. Cho shot him. He died there. Cho moved through the hallway again and again, returning to classrooms and firing at wounded students and others who were hiding. Police began entering the building at 9:50 a.m. They forced open the chained entrances and moved inside. At that moment, Cho entered one of the classrooms. He raised the gun to his own head. A gunshot rang out. Cho died there. In just 9 minutes, Cho killed 32 people and wounded 23 others. It became one of the deadliest campus shootings in American history. After the attack, NBC News received a package. Inside were photographs, videos, and a manifesto video recorded by Cho himself. In the video, Cho stared directly into the camera. He held guns in both hands and he said,
I have to do this. I could have left. I could have fled. But no, I will no longer run. If not for me, for my children, for my brothers and sisters, the chief. I did it for them. When the time came, I did it. I had to. Do you know what it feels like to be spit on your face and have trash shoved down your throat? Do you know what it feels like to dig your own grave? Do you know what it feels like to have your throat slashed from ear to ear? Do you know what it feels like to be torched alive? Do you know what it feels like to be humiliated and be impaled upon on a cross and left to bleed to death for your amusement? You have never felt a single ounce of pain your whole life. Yet you want to inject as much misery in our lives as you can, just because you can. You had everything you wanted. Your Mercedes wasn't enough, you brats. Your golden necklaces weren't enough, you snobs. Your trust fund wasn't enough. Your vodka and cognac weren't enough. All your debaucheries weren't enough. Those weren't enough to fulfill your hedonistic needs. You had everything. Sadistic snobs, I may be nothing but a piece of You have vandalized my heart, raped my soul, and torched my conscience. You thought it was one pathetic void life you were extinguishing. Thanks to you, I die, like Jesus Christ, to inspire generations of the weak and the defenseless people.
But many people still ask the same question. Why did he make this choice? Cho had been a very quiet student from an early age. He rarely spoke and struggled to connect with others. But the problems became more visible in middle school. Cho began experiencing severe bullying. He barely spoke and often kept his head down. Other students mocked him. Some tripped him and laughed. Others told him, "Go back to China." Cho withdrew further and further into silence. Eventually, he was diagnosed with selective mutism and major depression. He began receiving psychiatric treatment. Things did not improve in high school. Classmates later said students sometimes threw objects at him. Cho usually kept his head down and said nothing. Even in class, he rarely spoke. One day, a teacher asked him to read aloud. Cho read reluctantly. His voice was so quiet it was almost impossible to hear. Students mocked him again. Cho withdrew even deeper into himself. Later, Cho entered Virginia Tech. But even in college, his behavior remained the same. He rarely spoke in class. He sat in the back row with his head down. Sometimes he wrote notes. Often he simply sat there in silence. But the writing he submitted alarmed his professors. His work contained intense anger and violent themes. One professor, Nikki Giovanni, later said Cho's writing felt dangerous. Eventually, she removed him from her literature class. She also warned school officials to be cautious around him. Cho's behavior became increasingly disturbing. His roommate, Andy Koch, initially believed Cho was simply quiet. But over time, that impression changed. Cho began saying he had a girlfriend named Jelly. But the girl did not exist. She was imaginary. Sometimes Cho would say, "I'm with Jelly right now," and refuse to open the door. Cho also received a warning from campus police after a female student reported that he had been stalking her. Eventually, the university sent Cho for a mental health evaluation. A judge later ordered that Cho receive psychiatric treatment. Looking back now, many warning signs had already appeared. The severe bullying during his school years, the isolation he showed in college, the unease his professors felt, the disturbing behavior noticed by his roommate and other students. But none of those warning signs ultimately stopped the tragedy. On April 16, 2007, at Virginia Tech, 32 people lost their lives, and countless families and friends were left with wounds that would never fully heal. What was lost that day was not just a number. It was 32 human lives.